Hi everyone. Hello and welcome. We're joined today by Lorraine, and we are so excited to chat. Lorraine is part of our Careers Now team, and she works with ONICA, which is Ontario Native Education Counselling Association, which is basically comprised of First Nation education counsellors. Lorraine, I'll let you sort of explain a little bit more about ONICA, but we've got lots of questions for you today, just to understand a little bit more about how the food and beverage industry can be inclusive to Indigenous people, and hopefully learn anything that comes up today in our discussion. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit more about ONICA and your role with them.
Right. So the Ontario Native Education Counselling Association has partnered with Food and Beverage Ontario in order to promote careers within the food and beverage industry in Ontario, so that we can help raise awareness of the opportunities and careers which are present and coming in the future. So we have a large catchment of members who are, many of them are in Northern Ontario, in rural communities and or First Nations. Some of those are fly-in communities. So they need to find out about these opportunities, which, and I'm hoping that anyone listening in today will learn about this great industry in Ontario. And when we say we've partnered, we're sharing information, sharing resources. I'm going out to career fairs, doing webinars like this one, and live streaming with high school students. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to connect more closely with the bigger high schools that have a larger First Nation population, and we have a lot of exciting partnerships that are growing. And I'm looking forward to being, I'm a part of this team with Food and Beverage, which is really exciting. And it's also really good to be able to help our First Nations, especially the youth who may not, like I said, have access to this kind of information. And even though we live in urban centers, some of us don't realize where our food comes from. We don't realize or think about when we go to the grocery store and we grab a bag of potatoes or a frozen pizza, that maybe that pizza was made by a Canadian company and it was coming out of Mississauga. And we don't think back 2 or 3 stages as to where the food even came from that went into that pizza, because that's a manufactured product. So that's what we're focusing on here, is foods that have gone through a process from the farm to the factory, and they've been handled by different people, and possibly ingredients have been added, or they've been canned or bagged or processed in some way. And so we're also putting out there, we're promoting our own First Nation entrepreneurs who are in business, who are working with the food industry, who it may be anything from the fish processing to maple syrup production to even pet food. We have First Nations people who produce wonderful organic pet food in Southern Ontario, and that is also one of the food subsections that Ontario Food and Beverage deals with. So they deal with many subsections, and so the second part.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say we were lucky enough to have Paul on one of our previous mentorship sessions. Paul Owl, who
Yes.
you introduced us to, and I mean, such a passionate man, and I loved the fact that he talked about starting a business, and while he's passionate about the product, the tea he's producing, and the roots of why he started that product, he's also giving back to his community, saying how many people he's hired and how many jobs he's created.
Exactly. So it's a win-win for him, definitely. He's doing something he loves, and also the idea that a lot of young people are very much aware of, chef school and cooking in restaurants and being a line cook and being a server, but we're not really focusing on those types of careers at Careers Now. We're opening that up, like I said, to all of the different areas that, young people, which I hope I would like to share this video with in the future, because there are so many different areas with careers that offer a lot of opportunity for growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Lorraine, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about how did you get into this? I'm so curious as a recruiter at heart, like how you got into this profession.
Well, I guess I'm at this stage where I am a former teacher. I've worked in the public school sector and the federal school, private school sector. And prior to that, I had a stint with Ontario Works for about 4 years, where I worked as an employment coordinator. And I've always made the connection that all people want to be happy. That people need to work. That's not really an option, that we all have to work. So why not work, find out what you love to do, and, continue to improve on the skills that you have. Find a sector that will offer you, opportunities to keep moving forward, keep learning, getting more training. And so as a teacher, my goal was always, to help the students to be the best they could be in the skills that they had, help them develop their skills and help them find out what they were good at and build their self-esteem. And finally, social skills. We are finding that, and business and manufacturing is finding that it's very important to have social skills, and that's something that you learn from your home, from your environment that you grow up in, and your school experiences. So all of those things together, help us to be better people. And it's interesting that one of the parts of the Careers Now website offers approximately 14 career soft skills e-training
Mm-hmm.
for new hires, and those are skills that I just talked about, that we actually taught them in school at some point, probably more with the younger kids. But getting along, working with people, being a good team player, those are all important skills, and communicating, and that includes orally and written. But yeah, those are all things that employers need. So I guess my whole career has been always in the area of helping people. And I think that by sharing information and resources, more people will, find out about what they might want to try, and, they could try it out and see if it works for them.
Mm-hmm.
But not having that information is kind of sad. So
it's true. I think, you touched on the soft skills, and the technical skills can be taught in any organization, but those soft skills you talk about, the critical thinking, the communication skills, the, conflict resolution, all those types of things are things that if anyone can showcase those in an interview, especially those early in their career, just starting out, they definitely separate themselves from the pack. So, we're thrilled to have you on our team. We love your perspective, and from the Careers Now team perspective, I think as we grow, we're in year 2 now. We're hoping we get a couple of more years. That's in the works, as you know. But to reach out to different communities and make the food and beverage industry more accessible. I mean, you mentioned that the Indigenous community aren't aware of the career paths available in food and beverage processing, but it's not just limited to that community. We found, myself, since I started FoodGrads back in 2016, and to today, it's not part of the conversation at the high school level, or really, and beyond. It's, food, you mentioned chef, people think of, working in a restaurant or becoming a chef. If they hear, why don't you explore careers in food, they don't think about the manufacturing, the processing side of the business. So again, we're so happy that you're amplifying that message.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'll sort of fire off into some questions that I have for you. Again, we're learning as we go along too, but what is the most important to Indigenous students when they think about their career goals, do you think? Like what have you learned when working with students?
Well, we're no different than other people. We want to be close to family. We are very close to our communities, culture, and language, and obviously to make a good living and to feel respected in the workplace, to feel safe, that you're in a safe place, a safe environment. And well, there's so many other things. Let's see, I have some notes I could check.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, location. That keeps coming up. Many, like I mentioned, many of the Northerners feel that that there isn't a whole lot of opportunity unless they move. So some of them are able to move and relocate, and so they're looking for possibly a place that could be within commuting distance. Also, that could be another factor. Mm-hmm. Not everybody wants to move 400 miles from home, but maybe I've done jobs where I've commuted and a couple of hours one way in order to keep my home and to stay close to home base. So those are all the important things that everyone, I believe, wants. And
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And I think, my working with students, it's going back to education and making people aware of the different career paths that are available. It's interesting. I think people, the next generation, they don't want to hear, well, you can do this for the rest of your life. Like, that's kind of scary. Like, I don't want to do something forever. Maybe I want to change. Maybe I'll do it for a year or two. Maybe then I'll figure out where I want to be. Maybe I want to go traveling. I mean, there's different priorities now. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to do through Careers Now and FoodGrads and what your organization are doing is showcasing that, there are all these different career paths. You could go down this road, but you can switch. If you choose this, you're not stuck there for the rest of your life, Because I think, would you agree? Like, I think that nobody wants to feel they're pigeonholed forever.
Exactly. And that's the thing about being young. You can start out maybe even with a grade 12 education if you're not sure of what direction you want to go. I actually have a nephew who went right into long haul truck driving and right out of grade 12. Well, he had to take some courses for that. And, he actually took a different course, heavy mechanic training. And so regardless, a person can try, a job, and that's related to the food and beverage in the, that portion of it where you're actually transporting the goods. But then you could find out that, hey, I have an interest in, moving into an office. I'm good at numbers. Maybe I'll take a, finance course on the side or bookkeeping. There's jobs in HR, and you don't know that until you get out there and you start to meet other people and you start talking to them or you might find out that you're interested in food safety. Looking at different. So all of these different areas are related to this industry, and they need professionals. Mm-hmm. And more than likely, you will need to be good at technology. So I find the younger generation coming up are very, very, that's where they have an advantage. They are very quick to learn technology and programs. And so apparently, all of the manufacturing that's going on now, a lot of it requires people who are good at, engineering, technology, fixing problems, trying to save money on, heat that is lost in a building or water that has to be heated or, just saving money. And so there's so many different opportunities that, you could start in an entry level job and work your way up into something that you like, that you want to stay with. So the possibilities are endless, really.
You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you like until you maybe see somebody else. And I think that's something that is a misconception in the food industry. There are so many different roles. There's a ton of departments and different positions within each. And I think certainly a medium-sized, it's interesting, smaller organization, small to medium, you'll probably get to wear many hats and see how the business works and how, working through the different departments. So you learn, you cross train, so that if someone's away, you can take over their position, if they're away on vacation. So you are learning a lot more. I think in a larger organization, it's a different experience. Probably you are more siloed because it's so large. But I'm sure you'll still have the opportunity to, if you showed an interest, you told HR you wanted to experience what someone else was doing, you had an interest, that they would support that, because once you're in, I think most companies want to keep you. If you're a good worker and you have good work ethic and a great personality, you show up every day willing and friendly and optimistic, then I definitely think that companies won't want to lose you. So there are so many different pathways to take, and it's just that first step in exploring, and then the door sort of opens up, so to speak.
Right. And I'm learning as I go here. I've only been at this for a few months, but I was very surprised to hear that almost 95% of the manufacturing businesses in Ontario employ 100 people or less. So to me, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to know.
And there's a ton of opportunity. I think we have 8,000 establishments across Canada. And, in Ontario, I think it's across Canada, we need 50,000 workers by 2025, which is a huge number. That's due to growth, expansion plans, so due to sort of, the industry moving forward and what the plans are moving forward, but also people are retiring. So we're backfilling those positions when we're losing people to retirement. So there is, if there's a question of, well, will I have a job in 10 years? Absolutely. Like, food is not going anywhere.
Exactly. Food, we all need food. It's like water. They say water is life. Well, food is life as well. So they go together. But
it brings people together too. I think food is something everyone can understand.
Right. So I think that we need to think about what is preventing young people from entering, especially First Nations people. So the barriers that they are facing that other people might not be aware of are obviously being from a remote place and being out of your comfort zone, to have to leave your family, and the financial burden of also moving, relocating, taking that risk of possibly not liking what you did or liking where you live. And maybe people don't know this, but housing is an issue everywhere. Once you get your own home, it becomes more difficult to pack up and leave it nowadays. And a lot of First Nation people have a home, and they have a home base, and renting out is not always an option. So there's a lot to actually leaving your home. So therefore, some other barriers are not having mentorship, not knowing if you're going to have someone sort of showing you the ropes at the job, or there's just other things. There's so many of them. I could just, leaving the transportation costs alone of trying to go home for Christmas or holidays. Leaving the other thing is feeling isolated feeling like you're a stranger in a strange place.
Mm.
So that's that could affect your health too. We have, that's the other thing, is finding a doctor. All those things that happen when people relocate to a new city or a new town. If you have medical issues, you don't want to just pick up and move if you have an established doctor and medical care, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cost of living, maybe you have no idea what it's going to cost to live until you get there, and you know that on paper, that your rent is so much, but when you actually move, you start to learn the actual costs of moving and relocating. So
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, there's a huge population in the north, and I don't think that's not where the hub of the food processors
that's right.
are, right?
Right. So, we're looking at, we need employers to realize that, First Nation people also have cultural identity, and to feel inclusive. There's certain things that would make First Nation people, I think, happy. Like anyone would be happy to have an incentive at work. So if you worked at a food production and you produced meat or whatever, to have deals on the actual product would be a nice perk. So people would enjoy those kind of perks.
Yeah, I always think that's a bit of a miss if a food company, certainly with regards to their onboarding process, to make someone, and regardless of where the new hire
Right.
came from, utilize that time. You've got before they start, you've got the first day, you've got the first week, you've got the first month, like those milestones that you can, as an employer, that you can really focus on and put your best foot forward, make the person feel welcome before they even started. And I think there's different things that can be done, like you're saying, to truly connect with Indigenous people. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more, like what can employers really do so that instantly, someone who is from the Indigenous community would feel like they've been thought of, that someone's thought of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, they need to, I think, make a connection at the community level first. So if there's a company that's setting up shop in Thunder Bay, for example, I think they could make an effort to visit the local, like at least a dozen communities that are in the area, so that they can invite them in, start with the high school students, bring them in for tours, maybe make a partnership with as co-op students. I think we got to start with the youth first, like definitely get the youth involved, because then they're going to be the ones to take that leap and actually go and work there. For example, if they work there all summer, they'll feel more comfortable returning. Maybe they offer an incentive or a signing up incentive, startup money, or really showcase what benefits they have for all employees, like, dental and those kind of things, bereavement leave, things like that. And daycare is another one that came up recently. Some people have daycare. It's a real issue to leave a young child all day long. So a daycare would either have to be very close to the facility, or maybe flexible hours for people with children. Maybe even support finding housing when relocating, like just to say we have an HR person and they have a list of apartments that are available that are within a reasonable distance, or maybe they have more supports in place. But relocation is a big thing. And I was thinking about, again, having a co-op placement at the high school level and working with an industry to, set that up so that students can come into the facility and learn on the job and see what goes on. Like there could be office jobs, but there could be jobs on, in different areas. So training is really important. Some sort of training partnership we could try to arrange with a community so that people in the community do training and then they can move right into the industry with confidence. And so then these trainees are then recruited,
Yeah.
So they have basically guaranteed employment at the end of the training. And also I'm trying to think, I guess cultural sensitivity training could be part of it, because a lot of employers, like you said, like we mentioned, are smaller employers, and they probably haven't considered the benefit of training all employees and themselves and raising their awareness of Indigenous issues, so that, for example, when we have a day that is, for example, the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, a lot of people still aren't probably clear on what that means. Well, it is a day of grief for First Nation people, so it needs to be handled. It needs to be discussed, and so it needs to be in the discussion, and it could possibly even require a time off or a day of leave, personal leave for First Nation people. Things what are considered, maybe a big thing to the company is, to give an employee a day off. It will benefit them in the long run when they make that effort, because, as we said, they need to try and retain people, and that those are the small. I call it a small thing, but I know if I was an employer, it would be a big thing to do that. But it's important to raise awareness of the other employees as well, and so we're basically teaching history when we are reminding Canadians of our collective history and how it impacts people to this day. So those are the kind of things to pay attention to, I think.
I think you're spot on. I mean, a lot of these smaller organizations don't even have HR departments, so it's so far removed from their psyche to think along those lines. But so I think sometimes it's a case of not addressing it. It's not even top of mind. But it's not that they wouldn't. Maybe it's that they just don't know, and they don't know what's appropriate to say, and they don't want to offend anyone. So let's just not talk about it at all, because maybe I'm going to say the wrong thing. But I agree. I think a lot of the processes will be like panicked if they're giving a bunch of workers the day off, or employees the day off. But maybe there's a way they can say, bring everyone together for an hour and have someone explain what the day is for and what it's about. I mean, even something like that is a gesture to say we're here and we are willing to listen and learn. We haven't got all the answers, because I think almost you see that instead of addressing it, it's like, well, we don't know, so we don't touch it.
Exactly. It's good point. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of companies could certainly take that on board, and and I see a lot on social media of companies sharing things on their social media to support. But have they gone, it's easy to take something that someone else is sharing and repost it. Done, check mark, whereas have they actually taken the time to understand? Have they actually, taken the steps to learn? I think that's important.
So yes, a lot of people see, everyone wearing an orange shirt on that day, and they've also named it Orange Shirt Day. But every day is an Orange Shirt Day in Indian country. So we are sensitive to our history, and it's not over just because that day is over. And we also have different relationships with, for example, aunties and uncles are considered to be like extended parents, and so when they pass on, or even other relatives that we've been raised with are considered brothers or sisters. And if something happens and we need time off for bereavement or, for a family emergency, we consider them relatives, very close relatives, but according to an HR, agreement or a contract, they might not be deemed close relatives. So we do have issues with those kind of things as well, where in comparable to the Jewish community, where they have a tradition of sitting with their deceased relative for several days. We have very long wakes as well. So it's very similar in that way. And I know that we try to respect other people's ways on First Nations, and it would be awesome if we could receive the same treatment in other organizations where we work. So we need to educate these organizations about our ways so that they can at least be aware, and like you said, have a conversation about it and try to work with us on that. But yeah,
such a good point. It's such a good point. People just have their own lens. They don't
right.
They don't know, so they just
right.
And you're right. HR manuals, policies, procedures will say if someone passes away, and they even list a lot of the time mother, father, and if you can't prove that it's one of those close family members, then you don't get the time off to honor.
That's right.
Yeah.
And even so, you might only have 1 or 2 days, which is really tight if you have to travel. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on with that in itself. But yeah,
I was going to say, is there anything else that, because I hadn't necessarily thought of that, and again, that's my ignorance. Is there anything else similar to that, like a cultural thing that you've noticed that's different and that could be a barrier? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Let's see. Well, there must be some sense of humor. First Nation people, have a very good sense of humor, and start in meetings, for example, they like to break up the tension right off the bat, and that might not be so appreciated in certain circles. So it seems like it's being immature, or it's not respectful in that, at that time or at that place. But if you were in a First Nation community, you would see the chief maybe joking around a little bit here and there. And it really, really helps ease the tension, because we're always dealing with serious problems. And I think the good leaders have a good way of using humor and laughter. They call that good medicine. And it's a good way to, help everyone get through these hard times. And so, they think there's little things like that are just cultural that I think would benefit bigger companies to pick up on and not criticize that.
It's thoughtful. I think it's really, really thoughtful and kind, because I think we take for granted that people can walk into a conference room and get up on stage or ask questions, and then some will be seen as not interacting and not participating, when really they're, like, to your point, they're nervous. The tension is too much.
Right.
And if nothing is done around that, and again, if you're very confident and you're used to these things, you may not think about that. But I can really relate to that. And I have to say, every event that I've been to that's involved in Nika is fun. We went to the, Isabel and I did travel to the Sioux for the conference, and the evening was fun. I mean, it was about, like you said, humor and having fun. And even last week when we met in London, I told you this, it's just, you relax.
Yes.
People are there. There's no airs and graces. It's just, we're here together. We're addressing some issues. We're talking about this. We're talking about that. But there's a calmness that you don't always get. So whatever you're doing, it works. It does put people at ease.
That's it. Yes, and that's part of the culture of just having that respect for other people's what helps them, and not being too rigid in that way. Yeah, for sure.
Everyone's different.
Yeah,
Everyone's got different personalities, and just because somebody isn't putting their hand up to ask a question, it doesn't mean they're not engaged or they don't have good ideas. They're shy potentially, or they're introverted, and
that's it. Yeah,
and I think it's respecting all different personalities, very much so. There's something to be said for sure. I think doing that, especially you talk about young people getting into this. I think there is more of an emphasis on that. Like we are allowed to be ourselves, and good and bad, or whatever that means. Like I'm not saying that parts of us are good or bad, but you have strengths and weaknesses, and let's celebrate the weaknesses too. They're not necessarily weaknesses, they're areas of opportunity. But if you always feel that that's a weakness and it's inferior, then you might not step into your full potential. So I think your approach is something that we can all learn from.
right. And speaking of different abilities, I would say that careers in this industry are there for everyone, regardless of if you have an identified learning disability, for example. The whole industry is trying to accommodate people. So that's something folks need to hear, is you can work with your employer. You can let them know at the beginning if you have dyslexia, for example, or you're not comfortable with doing certain things because of physical handicap. So then you work with your employer, and they will work with you.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah,
you're exactly right. Again, it's not every employer knows what a disability looks like or how to manage it, but I think more and more we're doing it through Careers Now, through our connections with Discoverability Network, and we actually had a mentorship session on it. Again, employers, we have to give them a break in a way that they're busy, they're focused, they're trying to get that product off the line, and we're here to help them attract and be inclusive. And so,
right.
Our job is to show them what they can do, but also empower job seekers to go in and have those conversations and say, I can do this job, and empower job seekers to highlight their differences, but how that can be a strength on their resume. Because again, you're dealing with a lot of companies that don't have HR and that aren't focused on this stuff. They're not, that's not their strength. So right. It's up to the job seeker to really showcase what they can bring and what value they can bring to the table.
For sure. And I know a lot of folks are not comfortable, bragging. They consider it bragging, but showcasing their strengths. But that's how you have to get your foot in the door. And then, at the same time, if you have something that you feel uncomfortable about that you need to share, then, I think you got to have that conversation at the beginning and see what they can do to support you. And honesty is always the best policy. And, it's amazing what people can do if they're happy and they're comfortable, and they could probably be a lot even more productive than so-called, average people with no identified issues. But there's ways to work through everything, and yeah.
So true. It brings me on to my next question. You mentioned we should really start with youth and get them excited about a career in the food and beverage industry. Why should Indigenous youth take an interest in food and beverage processing? And that sort of broaden, if you could answer, how important is food in general in your culture? Like, and what can we do to that dotted line that, talk about food in general and then bring it as a dotted line to it, them thinking of a career in food and beverage processing?
Well, we basically know that food is always going to be very, very important. And I think First Nation youth should get involved, considering the rising costs of food and the rising costs of shipping. And this could possibly, create a ripple effect, in that I know some Northerners are starting to develop their own manufacturing with some Indigenous plants that are in the area, or they are growing their own greens year round in a greenhouse type of facility. And there's hydroponics, I think it's called. There's a lot of new type of farming that's starting, and it will work. It's viable in the north. And so I think that, they need to start considering these things if they want to be their own boss. Well, maybe they should work in this industry, which is very much needed. I'm just hearing today that there are restaurants in Southern Ontario that are in my area. I'll just say we're fairly southern. We're in Sudbury, that are not able to provide salad on the menu anymore because the cost of lettuce is through the roof.
Yeah.
So I think kids, young people, should consider foods that we like to eat, that we know are healthy, that they could possibly get involved with the production, or they could find ways of, dehydrating them or freezing them, or working in the industry to provide food in the north. I'm not sure of the prices in the far north. That's another story. But these are areas that are very important for the future of life in the north. We can't rely on these, ice roads to haul everything by truck either. They're unpredictable now with the climate that's changing.
It's such a great opportunity to connect that piece. We all need to eat, but to feed your family, to feed your friends, and actually make a living doing it, and start a business, and then employ more people and create more jobs. I definitely think that's such a huge opportunity, and hopefully the work we're doing with Careers Now will spark some interest. We can really get that message through. I know that we've got lots of ideas coming up with some career fairs and things, that hopefully we can just, even if it was one person that said, okay, I'm going to do this. This is really exciting to me. I think there's an opportunity here. That's all it takes. And then that can have a ripple effect. So
exactly. Yeah.
We're sort of getting closer to the 11 o'clock mark. So I was going to ask one or two more questions. When preparing students for their career journey, what's the number one piece of advice you give them?
When I would encourage them to find something that makes them passionate, happy, excited to go to work, and where they feel valued, where there are rewards for their efforts, opportunities for advancement, and choices, where they have choices in, like I said, possibly changing streams, and let me think what else. Obviously, earning a decent wage, a good living is important. And
you hear a lot about that. People say, well, kids today, they just want something to be passionate about, and they just want purpose. And they do. They want all of that, but they need to be paid fairly. They need to live.
Right.
When you look at like you mentioned, cost of food, rent, all the things, the car, transport. Yes, they want something they can be proud of, but we got to pay them well too.
Right. Yes, we do. For sure. Well, again, the opportunities are endless, and I should just, mention a few of the, the types of careers we're talking about. There are production jobs, and those include all types of managers, mechanics, millwright mechanic, butcher, cheesemaker, baker, winemaker, brewmaster, machine operators, sanitation workers, and like I said, those are production. Food safety, we mentioned, quality control technician, safety managers, quality assurance technicians, food auditors, food labeling specialists. So they have to, put the correct foods on the labels, the correct ingredients in the right amounts, and maybe do language translations. There are all types of business jobs, food purchasers, marketers. There are research and development jobs, engineering, chefs.
Sales. I was going to say sales, marketing, social media.
Right.
Like if that's their thing, the more the creative people.
Right. And then the supply chain, which is, the shipper, receiver, logistics. So I think this is where, this is what's happened in North America with the prices going up. It had a lot to do with our supply chain, and hopefully those things are going to level out. But in the meantime, there's so much opportunity to learn about food and and even on a smaller scale. For example, community gardens on First Nations. Many First Nations have, like my First Nation, Wikwemkong, Wikwemkung is how we say it now. We have a community garden, and other communities as well. And I believe some of them are processing some of their foods. They allow the band members to, preserve the foods in jars probably. And some of them sell them at like little flea markets, farmers markets. So there are opportunities to learn this as a trade. And there's a group out of Medoki Farm out of Ottawa, and they are doing some training in that area. And I believe there are others where they are training young people to work with food and manufacture a little bit of it. So, and
there are subsidies, right? There's access to subsidies and support, and it's not easy to run a food business, and you're not expected to know everything, but there are supports in place.
Yes, and so yes, we have employment and training organizations in the First Nations that people can go to get support and information in a business plan if they want to make a formal business. But to start out, I think a person could. I know of people that are starting with a food truck, and so there are different ways of getting into this business and then expanding. Yeah.
Well, and I think it can take them by surprise, right? They start thinking this is something small, and then all of a sudden it is a business, and they need to hire people, and
right.
Oh my goodness, it's a success, which is how a lot of food companies start.
Yes. I was speaking with Rama, a Rama band counselor, and she was describing, how they use all the parts of their plants from their community garden to the surprise of some of the younger people. They were using the onion skins and making different remedies out of them, and that's okay, I guess, at a small scale, but that's very that's Indigenous knowledge that we have, and we have to be careful with that. But definitely the idea of not wasting is at the heart of it. And so that also goes for any harvested animals. So again, those type of businesses, if a person were to harvest, say, moose meat, make sausages, or make some products, that would just be a seasonal business, I would imagine, because you don't get that all year round. You don't stockpile it, not like other foods. So yeah, we have some. There are opportunities for people that are creative, for sure. To use your creativity and to make money.
I love that some of the things you just touched on with regards to the waste, and that's part of your culture. That's how you've been raised. It's generation to generation. And now it's like, in organizations, they call it sustainability. And it's like, you already had that mindset, and now we're introducing it as a mindset because for years people weren't so concerned, and now, with climate change and all these other things, like these buzzwords, we actually have a sustainability mentorship session coming up in the new year, and it's really to teach people how to have that sustainability mindset. I'm hearing this is what your community already, this is how you already think. So again, it's that transferable skill set that you don't even know you have until you have these conversations. It's awesome.
Right. It's just like in school when I was teaching, and they started coming out with all this land-based learning, and I was just chuckling because I was, we've always been doing this. This is now it's on paper, so it's real. Whoa.
Yeah. It's like someone else said it's a thing, and
it's a real thing now. I should have wrote that book.
Yeah, no kidding. This has been so much fun. I knew it would be. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully we'll plan another Onika focused session in the new year. We'll see if we can get a couple of guests on to talk further about these issues. And any last words? I'm happy to turn over to you. Otherwise, again, it's always a pleasure chatting with you and learning from you.
Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
No problem. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah.
Thank you for everyone that tuned in to listen to our conversation. If you would like to learn more about the Careers Now platform, please visit careersnow.ca. You can access training. There is free skills training. All the mentorship sessions are there. And certainly you can learn about the job fairs that are coming up. We have one next Tuesday at 11 o'clock. All the jobs that Lorraine just mentioned, those types of roles are available. And we're hoping to have some Indigenous focused career fairs as well, to really tie everything that we're learning and working on together. Just some specific ones coming up. So if you are interested to learn more about that, please stay in touch with us. My email address is always on the screen throughout these sessions, so you can absolutely connect with me directly. And on that note, have a great rest of the week. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.